Welcome. Thank you for tuning into our video cast. We are presenting on imposter syndrome. For those of you that don't know us, we'll start with introductions. I'm Sarah Thomas. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health and Wellness here at A.T. Still University. I'm going to pass it to Desirai for introductions and to get us started on this important topic.
Hi folks, my name is Desirai Browning and I am one of the mental health counselors on the Mesa campus. So like Sarah said, we're going to be going over imposter syndrome today. It might be something that you folks have felt before, or maybe you weren't even sure you felt it, but we thought it'd be an important discussion to be able to have with you folks today. So some of the things that we're going to go over, one, we're going to define imposter syndrome. You've probably heard it before, but actually what is it? And then we're also going to go into the research. As med students, we know you love some research, so we have some facts and some important things to know. And then we're going to wrap it up today by actually talking about different tools to help being able to address imposter syndrome at different levels and how you can hopefully take some of these skills and apply them to your own life as well. So starting with our background, let's just actually go ahead and define imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the internalized feeling of self-doubt and not belonging in a particular group that can lead to the fear of being discovered as a fraud, a feeling that maybe you don't belong and that somebody else is going to catch on to it. And it was first described by a couple of different psychologists, including Suzanne Imes, a PhD, and Pauline Rose-Clance, also a PhD. And this was actually discovered back in 1978. So this has been around for quite some time now. And it can be found amongst any kind of person, especially with high achieving people, which is going to be you folks as med school students. And this can range from a feeling of a few weeks to much longer, including months or even years. So even if you feel it now, doesn't mean that you'll feel it forever. And if you don't feel it now, it might come up at some point in your career at any time. So there's a couple of different symptoms of imposter syndrome, and maybe some of these will feel familiar. One is that lack of self-confidence. Two, feelings of inadequacy, maybe feeling like you are not good enough or feeling like you don't belong here. Comparisons to other people, maybe not feeling like you measure up to the other folks in your class or even just in like your group projects. The fourth symptom that you might notice is anxiety and or depression. Both of these can coexist. And just because you feel anxiety or depression doesn't mean you have imposter syndrome, but it can definitely play into this. 5 is going to be that self-doubt, and 6 is going to be that negative self-talk. But we can't all be imposters, can we? There's no way we all showed up to AT Still and every single one of us is a fraud. But this is a really great quote that I like to be able to talk about with folks, and was by Dr. Jessamy Hibbard. So maybe it's something you folks can look into, but let that sink in with you a little bit. See how it hits you, maybe 5 minutes, 5 hours, or even during your next exam week. And I will pass it to Sarah to talk to you folks about some of our research.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the facts. So the way I look at the imposter syndrome research, and as Desirai pointed out, the syndrome, or some of the researchers call this more a phenomenon because they feel like it's not a syndrome like a medical syndrome, but more of a phenomenon because most of us feel this way at some point, but can be referred to as both. So the important thing, I think, of why there's a lot more research recently about imposter syndrome, and it's tied to a lot of high achieving individuals, is because we have understood that individuals in high achieving, especially these health professions, medical students, physician assistant students, dental students, and many others struggle with imposter syndrome. We have seen more and more research that these students struggle with mental health disorders like anxiety and depression. And now we're to the point like, why are they struggling more with that? And imposter syndrome is one of the things that we're seeing. And so why it's important to think about and talk about. So to start with, researchers have identified this cycle. So at the top, you see a new project or task. So we are confronted with a new thing. So it could be starting a new program, It could be a project or a task at school or in the workplace. Or it could be, I'll get back to that here in a minute too. It could be a change. So we see imposter syndrome rise when we are in a point of transition. So for all of our programs, at some point you go from clinical or the classwork, didactic education to the clinical education piece. And so that shift of going from the classroom and exams to working with patients can also make students feel like, am I ready for this? Am I an imposter? Am I getting away with something? So that is often what we see. And so then a student might feel anxious. And then another thing we see when that anxiety gets high, we lean to usually both can happen with people, but sometimes we're more of a procrastinator or more of an over preparer. I'm the procrastinator person. Desiree, are you more of a procrastinator or an over preparer when you are hit with a new task that's kind of scary?
Honestly, it just depends on the task for me. Say it's a good mix of both.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, maybe it depends on the topic. So one of my colleagues, Jennifer McNeely, who's the Director of Learning Resources and Accommodation Services, she is definitely an over preparer. So when we present together, we're like, we're on the other sides here. So what can happen is our stress gets high. So it can lead to procrastination, and we're like, oh, deal with that another day. So instantly that feels a little better. That's some relief. But in the long run, not so good. Where other people, if they're an over preparer, they feel like they have to start getting things done. And while that might seem like always a positive, it can lead to like burnout and just like over preparing, spending too much time in it, and working on a project that maybe isn't due for a month and working on it every single day can cause some distress too. So then we get to the project completion. You have a brief relief and a sense of accomplishment. So you're like, oh, got through this project, whether I did it the night before or I did it months before. And then there is that thought though that comes in our head like, oh, I was lucky. Somebody else would have done a better job, or somehow I lucked out this time. And then that self doubt creeps in like, oh, they're going to find this out. I didn't do as well. They're going to feel, that feeling like they're a fraud, and the anxiety kind of creeps in as well. So this is the cycle until we start a new project or task. Okay, so some of the research findings include these topics. So we know it's observed in high rates in women and people of color. So those populations we know experience more. The research findings are they experience more imposter phenomenon, and a lot of that's tied to just seeing people of their color, their race, their background, or their gender in a certain like population group, or um, in that route of study or that career path too. There's a negative relationship between resilience and imposter syndrome. So the higher your resilience, the lower your imposter syndrome. And resilience can mean a lot of things, but it is a good topic to look at as well. And we'll kind of get to some of those things at the end of how to increase that resilience. The next, it can be comorbid with anxiety and or depression. There's also other things like perfectionism and other topics as well that also correlate in a lot of research with imposter syndrome. And increased age is associated with decreased imposter syndrome. So as we get older, have more experiences, our imposter syndrome can go down. And that isn't across the board always, because there's definitely people at different ages that might start a new path and they struggle with imposter syndrome. But generally, we know with more experience or, working through imposter syndrome, probably other times in our lives, we get better at dealing with it as we get older. Okay, so here I have identified, so sure I have all my results up here to look at. So in August of 2021, I did a research study with medical students. So this was both our ATSU KCOM students and our ATSU SOMA students. And in August, so it's important to think about the time of year, I studied using the CLANCE imposter phenomenon scale, which was, as we saw earlier, one of the original founders of imposter phenomenon, and talking and researching about imposter phenomenon syndrome. And we use this scale to research our students, and I had 198 participants across both programs, and this is the averages by the years of study. So as you can see, first years struggled the most, right? And that makes sense, right? They're starting a new journey. We know there's a lot of things associated with starting a new, very difficult program like medical school. And this data correlates a lot with some of the other research in my literature review that correlated with other programs like PA students and dental students as well. So then we see that overall, the averages decreased in year 2, and then we see a rise in year 3. So for a majority of the participants, so there was a higher number of KCOM participants than SOMA participants, but in this year, the year 3 in August is where they transition to clinical education, and with SOMA students, probably more clinical education as well. So patient care, a change of their, a transition in their education. And then luckily in year 4 is where we saw the lowest imposter phenomenon scale. So overall, the mean average score, so the average score indicated frequent imposter feelings among our study participants, and 3.6% reported few imposter characteristics, so very small for few. 27.4% reported moderate imposter phenomenon experiences. 46%, so about half, reported frequent imposter feelings, and then 23 reported intense imposter experiences. So that was the information we found from our own ATSU students. And as I mentioned, there is a lot of research in the last few years on this topic. So you can, look in the journal articles and find more of your own. So some other things. So overall, about 75% of med students experience imposter syndrome, 22 to 60% of med students who experience burnout, and 61% of med students experience anxiety. So we know these things are also correlated. So a lot of the studies will see that these students struggle with a variety of these things. So speaking about it, having discussions, videos, or presentations like we are now, or doing some research helps us because we know these are frequent feelings our students have. So, and then the areas of your life that are impacted, and then this helps us understand too, those correlations that we just talked about. So you can have your life impacted if you're struggling with imposter syndrome by your work performance. I think that's clear. Questioning a lot, experiencing procrastination, over preparing, taking on too little or too many responsibilities. So some people might underestimate themselves and take on less responsibilities than they're capable of, or others might not take on too many because they feel like that need to prove themselves and show that they can do more. Individuals also struggle with self-doubt, lower self-compassion, which is a real key here, sociability, and self-esteem. Attributing success to outside factors, kind of like we talked about, like luck or other things or other components made this thing happen for them, or that success happened. It might be like a student might say, oh, those were easy questions. The professor was easy on us, or there was a giant curve. Well, some of those parts might be true. You also have to identify it's not all those outside factors that help you be successful. There's a lot of validity here to your own hard work and success. We know over time this can lead to job dissatisfaction and burnout. That constant struggle and those thinking traps that imposter syndrome gets us in can just really burn us out. Individuals can avoid seeking promotion. So in the long run, we definitely don't want that for our students. We want our students to identify and know their worth and value and seek those promotions as you get out into the workforce. And also a loss of focus on tasks and responsibilities. So the thinking traps and the brain difficulty, your brain telling you different things can become really busy. And so it really makes it hard to focus on certain things that you need to do. Right. And now, Desiree, can you talk to us about some tools? So how can we start to work on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, imposter syndrome or phenomenon is very common. Sarah and I bet, have also experienced. Am I right, Sarah?
Yes.
So just because we are professionals in our field doesn't mean that we also don't face it ourselves. And so some of these tools you might find to be super duper useful for you. And you're like, yes, this is my go-to. And some of these tools maybe you don't like, and that's okay. But it's important to know as many as you can, just in case you need them, or just in case you need to even tell them to a friend. So some of the tools that we have for overcoming imposter syndrome include one, separate your feelings from your facts. Your feelings are valid. I'm going to tell you that a million times. Your feelings are valid. Sarah's going to tell you that a million times. But our feelings are not always facts. So just because we feel like we are an imposter, it's okay to feel that way. But it doesn't mean we are an imposter. Maybe it just means that we're a little bit stressed. Maybe it means we're putting too high expectations on ourselves. And those are okay too. But it's important to be able to separate those facts from those feelings. Second, create a success log. I bet you probably have a list of reasons why you think you shouldn't be here or why you think you're an imposter. But what about all the reasons why you should be here? The fact that you even got into ATSU, the fact that you are still in this program now watching this video. And there's so many other reasons why you deserve to be here. So keep that success log, write it down, make a physical list of all the reasons you deserve to be here. Three, stop comparing. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's typically not used in a way that makes us feel good, but usually in a way that makes us feel less than. And why would we want to do that to ourselves? But being able to compare maybe how much we've grown in the last month, how much we've grown in the last year, or shoot, just between your last exam and this exam week. But don't compare yourself in a way that takes away from you. Or talk to other people, including the counselors. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Being able to talk to other folks because I guarantee other folks are feeling just as you. Five, find a mentor. Somebody in your program, maybe in a year above you, maybe an alumni, or maybe even staff or faculty who might be able to assist with that and help talk you through. The sixth option is also remembering that constructive feedback is not criticism. You are allowed to have feedback, and that is okay. It doesn't mean that you are going to be a bad doctor, PA, OT, whatever your field might be. It just means that it's taking in some of that feedback that we have so that you can be even better in your field. It doesn't mean that you are going to be awful. It doesn't mean that that's now proof that you shouldn't be here. Feedback is a constant source of potential support for you in your field. And it's something that you're going to get also outside of ATSU, whether it's your rotations, your job, your relationships, whatever it might be. Feedback is a way that we can just take that in, apply it to ourselves, and potentially become better in the outcome. We also want to talk about that difference between fixed and growth mindsets. Both of these get a lot of talk, especially if you've seen Instagram Reels or TikToks. Both of these are very popular on there. But there is a difference between the two of them. Now, that fixed mindset is going to be able to attributing that success to some sort of innate ability, something that, even Sarah said earlier, like it could be luck or an outside factor that might be impacting it. But that growth mindset really attributes success not to some just inherent talent, like, oh, I'm just good at this, but it allows for like that growth and development. The fact that you are going to grow and develop in your skills. The fact, I mean, it's in the name, it's growth mindset. That you're not just stuck with the same set of skills you have right now, but that you're going to continue to be able to water those skills and watch them bloom into something that can actually be really beautiful versus being stuck in the parent skill set that you think you have. So that growth versus that fixed mindset is an important thing to be able to challenge every once in a while. Am I thinking with that fixed mindset or am I thinking with the growth mindset? Can I take this feedback and use it for constructive growth, or am I going to take it as a way to limit myself and my possibilities here? Also, the power of not yet. Like any new skill, obtaining a growth mindset is going to take practice. Just because you listen to this video, we're not expecting you to be an expert on this, but we are expecting you to give yourself some grace. And it gives you a path to move forward by just adding the words not yet. The difference between I'm not good at this versus I'm not good at this yet. I am still allowed to grow in my skills and my capabilities. We're able to process the error, whatever occurred, learn from it, and then correct it. Make mistakes, make many mistakes. Be able to learn from those mistakes, and then try not to make those mistakes again. And even if you do, it's okay. You're in a learning environment. And so being able to take that mindset and using it with that power of not yet to recognize that your growth is a process. It's not just a fixed thing, a one and done kind of situation. It's also reframing. Now, sometimes with reframing, it can be a little difficult to come up with like, what are you actually supposed to tell yourself? So we have a couple of different words on here, some maybe thoughts that you've had, and we kind of did some of the work for you of how you can possibly reframe this. So if we say something like, why me? Why this? Why me right now? Being able to tell yourself, I'm in spaces that I deserve to occupy because you're here. All those people you're comparing yourself to, you're all in the same classroom, taking the same test, all on the same path to become a doctor or whatever field or title that you're going for. If you have the thought of, what if I'm not good enough? My success is not due to luck. Also, what if you are good enough? If you're going to play the what if game, you got to play both sides. You can't just make it a one-sided competition with yourself. Another potential thought, something bad will happen to erase all the good that is happening. Versus, I'm all the positive things that people say about me and more. Why can't that also be true? Sarah mentioned earlier those thinking traps, and that's a really interesting topic to dig a little bit further into, and we definitely will at some other point. But thinking traps play a role in this imposter syndrome. You might also have a thought of, people will think I'm not good enough versus I am enough, period, done, exclamation point, however you want to end that sentence. But you are good enough. If you don't believe it, take it from us. And maybe eventually you get to that point of being able to say it and say it confidently. You might also have the thought of, I won't be able to live up to everyone's expectations versus I'm here because of my hard work. You earned your place here. And also, it's going to be really hard to live up to everyone's expectations. I think we can just be honest about that. And that's okay too. You might also have a thought of, I don't deserve this versus I have worked hard for what I have. And you have. You're here. You show up every day and you do your best. Maybe your best is not 100% every day. Maybe it's 80% and you still give all 80%. It's still 100% of what you have to give. So you're still doing a really great job. Some additional strategies, reconnect with your why. Why are you here in the first place? What motivates you? What makes you excited? Why is this a passion for you? Why did you sign up anywhere from a 2-year program to potentially 8+ years of medical school to achieve this dream? What keeps you motivated and going? Another strategy is also know and lead with your strengths. Figure out where you excel. Figure out where maybe you don't and turn them into strengths. Take a strengths finder assessment. Connect with learning resources and learn how you learn and be able to utilize those things to your best ability. And also connect to your values. Maybe your value is in being able to be empathetic. Maybe your value is in positivity, or maybe it's being able to be an includer, or maybe it's being a leader. But find those values that you hold very dear to you and use that to guide your work. Play into your values because that makes you all the more successful and all the more just excited in general to be here. So this is another quote that is really fabulous. It's by Valerie Young, who is a renowned expert on imposter syndrome and actually the co-founder of the Imposter Syndrome Institute. But one of the things that she stated is that everyone loses when bright people play small. You all are incredibly bright people. Don't play small. I know one of the things even Karen says is that when you know your worth, you don't give people discounts. And so allowing yourself to live into that full value of who you are, even if you feel like other people doubt you, or even when you doubt you. But don't dim your light just to make other people shine a little bit brighter either. So hopefully you've learned a lot. Maybe you learned a little bit. Maybe you sat here and you're just like, I don't know. But hopefully you took something from this. Sarah and I are definitely excited that you took the time to listen to, if not all of this, at least a part of this. And I'll pass it to Sarah too if she has any other words as well.
Oh, great job, Desiree, and thank you for all that information. I think one of the biggest things I hear from new students, especially, is that it is a big transition coming to these very competitive programs because students compare themselves to others and they certainly feel like, oh, wow, like I am in an intense environment right now. Everybody is so intelligent and bright, which is true. You all are intelligent and bright, but that's because we want each and every one of you to succeed and be successful, and you can. This is not a competition here. Literally everybody can get A's and graduate, or B's or C's and get through these programs. So it's not a competition. We are here to support you. So for more information on behavioral health and wellness, keep watching our videos or go to atsu.edu/BHW. Thank you.